it's kind of a paradoxical approach that every leader has to take to try and retain that staff because they know how important it is, but at the same time, they know how challenging it is to retain them. What is your personal approach to that?
That's an amazing question, just because it's, it's in the front lines of every industry and every business. Where are you going with this? But how are you going to treat me? What is my day-to-day feeling going to be when I come to this operation? How am I going to feel? Am I going to come in with anxiety? Am I going to come in with energy? Am I going to look forward to my operation? So we have to create this environment where the employee or the manager is important to you, but important to you in a very transparent and honest way, so that when they do spend maximum of hours with you, more so than with their family, it is a real thing. It becomes an asset to them. It becomes a tangible thing. It becomes something they can depend on. And I lead it every single day as to, how can we help you? What do you need? Do you need to leave for your kid?
Hello, welcome to the Current by Oceans. I'm your host, Keylor, and this is the show designed for hospitality operators, the leaders that make everything possible behind the scenes of this industry. Today, I'm joined by Thiroshan Chetty. He is the sports director at Golden Ocala. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Keylor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thiroshan, before we dive in, can you please tell us how you ended up in hospitality? What was your career like? Did the industry pull you in, or was it a natural direction that you took?
It's a great question. Yeah, it was sort of a natural reaction. I think it's personality based. I've always been somebody who's, giving back and evaluating. So being a sports tennis professional, winning the national championship in South Africa, combined with the regional hospitality of South Africa, it was a natural pull for me to go into this kind of setting. And so I'm very comfortable in it.
I remember you told me about your past in sports, and I think that's very unique to you. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about that if you can share.
Yeah, absolutely. I started playing tennis, when I was about 8 years old, in South Africa, and I competed in the South African National Championship and won that in 1992. So yeah, I was crown champion, and I decided, that I'd like to take my tennis skills to the United States, and I came over and played in lots of high-end junior tournaments, went to Division I university, played semi-pro for a little bit, but I also coached on the WTA professional tour for a few years. So being in that setting, I'm pretty familiar with it. And, and I've also played cricket for South Africa under 17. So it's been a fun ride of sports over the years. So, and I'm still heavily involved in the sports industry now.
Thiroshan, I definitely want to talk about your current role, but before we get into that, I'd love to know, how has the sports experience that you have from your past influenced your current style of leadership and the way that you approach your work?
So I think that's a great question to ask, because the influence of being an athlete and being around coaches and being around people who communicate and lead, and also those who have no leadership skills, the combination of all of that helps you in this journey, in this path forward of being able to lead and coach other people and see effective ways and see a variety of ways to be able to communicate to people. So the sports aspect of it really propelled me into this hospitality platform, to where you in front of so many different kind of people, and how do you coach them? How do you teach them? How do you extract the best out of them? How you apply sports strategy? How do you apply it to the business world? So there were so many things from a sporting athletic field that just transfers naturally over to the business world, over to and more specifically, the hospitality industry.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the discipline, that goes
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
practicing sports. So now let's talk a little bit about your role at Golden Ocala, because my understanding is it's a relatively recent role, but a very high impact. So could you tell me more about first the operation, the scale, what the team looks like, what you're currently building there as a team.
So I've been at this club for about 20 years. So evolved into the sports director specifically for tennis, and because that's been my background, and now looking forward to a pickleball industry as well. But being involved in just all aspects of the club, because that's what we're supposed to do. The evolution of the country club experience over the last 20 years, especially for me, has been just incredible. Seeing it from an amenities point of view, seeing it from a food and beverage point of view, seeing it from a club center point of view, from an economics point of view, putting all of those together, being in my position is just so amazing to see because it's a picture. So, with the sports role, grew this business acumen, this business yearning for wanting to get further into the operational part of the club because, I also do real estate. So seeing the data and seeing the demographic and the economic climate, with real estate and how it pushes into country club settings is fascinating. So doing all aspects of it has just been really, really intriguing.
I will definitely want to unpack a little bit more about all of these aspects that you mentioned. Let's start with a simple angle here, which is your day to day. This is a response that, everybody gives me all kinds of responses to this, especially in leadership, because not every single day looks the same once you get to a certain point in your career, right?
Yeah.
But even still, right? I mean, if you had to tell me the common things that you typically come across, what you're typically spending most of your time on, not the role description, but the real life version of it.
Yeah, I think the most important things for me is, being able to make sure that our touch points are on par every single day, meaning that every member experience is to the highest quality. It is met with the highest level of deliverance. And so prior to these touch points, we go over, what our strategy is for the membership and how are we going to impact them on every single moment, because it is not so much about the management, it's about the employees, it's about the managers, it's about, to my point about these touch points where people are running into, all these different members. So we work on specifically how are we going to impact these moments, because you're going to get a very, very short moment for it. So we spend a micro session in the morning going over our daily strategy and these touch points and how to accommodate members and their guests and their experience. And we build on it. But the most important thing that we do at the end, we reflect on it, because that reflection gives us ability to be able to remember what we did, whether it was positively or negatively, and be able to immediately make a change, or to be able to chat with the employees or the managers about something that they did good. So it's just a momentum that we built for these important touch points to make sure that the experience now is, is fruitful.
That sounds very complex, and I'll definitely want to also get to down into the weeds in a moment because I'd love to learn more about what you do to run that operation. But start with tell me, for example, something that you're very satisfied with, something about the operation that you or your team has figured out that you are extremely happy with.
There's a lot of things, but I think the most important thing that I take pride in is offering value to the members and the guests. And I think value can be perceived in so many different ways, but for us is how do we calculate that value and how do we apply it and how do we make sure that that's one of the bigger goals that we have for these members. So we work on what the costs of what we're offering is, right? And does it apply to the real world for some of these members? With these economic situations, when they come out, some of the things that we do are not necessarily needs, they are wants. But how do we keep on bringing them back? Is what we're charging appropriate? Is it appropriate that we are making a good margin on it? Is it okay that we have a recurring business? So the biggest thing for us, like I said, is the value from a business standpoint, but also the value from a lifestyle standpoint. So are we improving the lives of these members? Are they coming here? Are they happy? Are they satisfied? Are they leaving saying, wow, that was great? And so if you were to summarize or put it in a nutshell, it would definitely be, how did we make you feel? And it's the fundamental principle, how I run my operation, because it won't be how good we were in, whatever segment of business we are, or the latest toy that we have. It's about how did we make you feel when you interacted with that pro or the latest toy or the lesson or the food and beverage experience? So the bottom line is, and that runs deep into our teaching and our management of how did that make you feel as an employee is how you're going to make the member or the guest feel. So it's very transparent, but it's very direct.
Yep, I love that. I also want to ask you more about that once we wrap this up, but because I also want to know from your current role, what's the hardest part today in your mind that somebody that is not in this industry might not appreciate?
I think the ability to have several different, from a staffing perspective, is having several different managers or employees come into your realm or your home with different personalities, different backgrounds, different traumas, different psychologies, and being able to transform them if they are willing into what our sunlight looks like. So that's a massive challenge because they come here with a whole set of different ingredients. And so that's the biggest challenge for us because from a personnel standpoint, if we cannot succeed there, it is very difficult to be able to execute our strategies. It's very difficult to be able to execute the touch point stances, right? So the personnel for me is the biggest. And if we can find people and be able to train them, not just on their responsibilities or their day to day, but to influence their psychology, it helps us with our bigger macro goals, which then affect our micro goals. So in a nutshell, just people being able to get to them and seeing if they're willing to buy into our philosophy of who we are, and so at times the vulnerability, it becomes a very, very important thing for me because, I have to first lead with that vulnerability and then have my employees or have the managers be able to share that same vulnerability. And from that, there's no mask or there's no facade. There's just the element of we are here to provide the very best experience.
That's great. So, the ocean, let's dive a little deeper. And I'm going to start with something that you just mentioned. I think that's a nice segue into this section because one thing that comes up very often in this show from operators in hospitality is staff turnover. It's really, really high in the industry right now, above 70%. Staff rolls on year by year. So it's very difficult to retain them. And I hear you say that staff is also critical. It's kind of a paradoxical approach that every leader has to take to try and retain that staff because they know how important it is, but at the same time they know how challenging it is to retain them. What is your personal approach to that?
That's an amazing question just because it's in the front lines of every industry and every business. And it's in the front lines of homes, of relationships. And it comes down to the perspective of the leader. What is your core? What is your dark chocolate? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Where are you going with this? But how are you going to treat me? What is my day-to-day feeling going to be when I come to this operation? How am I going to feel? Am I going to come in with anxiety? Am I going to come in with energy? Am I going to look forward to my operation? So we have to create this environment where the employee or the manager is important to you, but important to you in a very transparent and honest way so that when they do spend maximum of hours with you, more so than with their family, it is a real thing. It becomes an asset to them. It becomes a tangible thing. It becomes something they can depend on. So for me, having the ability to be able to bring the staff in and open them up on a more personal level is because when we get to the true aspect of who they are, and then to be able to develop from there, it won't be just strictly from a business standpoint. It'd be from that personal level. What are your core beliefs? Who are you? In a moment of truth, can we count on you? And so I lead it, and I lead it every single day as to how can we help you? What do you need? Do you need to leave for your kid? Do you need to do you have the ability financially to be able to make it a year or two from now? So that personal standpoint, away from the professional aspect, it helped me over the years to be able to retain membership because these employees, although they got paid $2 or $3 or $4 more somewhere else, were calculating the experience that they were receiving here that they weren't able to receive anywhere else. The ability to stop them and ask them, hey, how's your day? How's everything going? What can I do better? Help me as a leader. And I found that more important than actually going over line item by line item with them and talking about, hey, our margins are down. I mean, that's very important. It's critical to any kind of journey, but the ability to get to them, because there's not enough of that happening. We are moving at 20 times the speed of light, right? And time is going, but the ability to approach them from a psychological standpoint and said, hey, I want to trust you. And how do we do that and build that? Help me to keep a lot of I have three managers here and they've been with me for 9 years. So I was able to take some of that and said, okay, this could work. So in a nutshell, that personal relationship with them, that vulnerability, that honesty, diving into it very, very deeply, is I think makes a massive difference. And having the opportunity, to go to business school and learn the business aspect of it, but there's so much of that business school that also push towards what Apple is doing, what Google is doing, and they've changed the industry where we used to believe the customer's always right to now the employee is the most important. And what is that? It's the ability to say, welcome, come on into our house. This is a safe place, right? So much of it is psychology and trauma for a lot of these employees because they're dealing with financial constraints, health constraints. So the ability to make it a safe space for me is a critical aspect of the infrastructure of building the business, but like I said, from a business school standpoint, they wanted us to emulate a lot of what Apple and Google is doing, where they're providing facilities and means, for example, for their kids to be able to have daycare or to be able to have snacks or to be able to have lunch. And you wouldn't believe what a lunch does for somebody, right? I mean, it's a massive thing. So people matter, and there's not enough of that going around. So I'm grateful to be able to learn from that journey and those mistakes and really take it seriously.
Thiroshan, you said something that's sticking with me, and I want to make sure you can unpack that a little further. You said part of what you're satisfied with from your operation is value, and you're putting a lot of attention to value and how you deliver that value back to the customers as well. But you also said that how do you measure that value? How do you constantly quantify it and make sure that you know where value is so that you can continue to bring more of it? What are some ways in which you do that? Like take something as subjective as value and quantify it. What are those top metrics?
So I think retention, from a business standpoint, retention is probably the number one metric that we use, and how are we sequentially getting to the higher numbers of more members, more guests, more events, more and more and more and more. So that number is telling us, hey, listen, we're on the right path. We're doing something right here in terms of a business sense metric. From a more humanly point of view is the feedback that we're getting from these guests and for these members is truly what I think makes more sense and penetrates us in a deeper way to, hey, you've changed my life. I was dependent upon, medications, or I was so stressed and I come here and this is a different world for me. Right. So we get that human feedback constantly. And that's how we know that we onto this value in a different proposition, from a human standpoint, from a metric standpoint, from a business standpoint. And then we adjust our strategies accordingly. As for example, hey, do we want to raise prices? Can we? Can our margins sustain, not raising prices? Are we on the right path, right track? What's our goal? Are we looking for raising prices substantially and having a lower output or lower volume of people come in? Or do we want to keep it the way it is, have more people? So that trickling effect of offering it, talking about it. And then from that point, we break it down to 6 levels from there. Why? We go to the Kaizen philosophy. Why? Why do we have to raise? Well, why? And I mean, once we break it down, it answers itself. The questions get answered that sometimes we don't have the answers to, and it's just before us. But yeah, value on many different levels.
Do you have example of a number, of a metric, something that you looked at recently, either by yourself or with your team, or when you were looking at a report that made you go, "Wow, we're doing really good here"? Is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah. So for example, the year by year on let's say a tennis lesson, we'll look at it and we have a growth of approximately 20 to 24% annually. But that's without touching um, any of the price points. That's without increasing any of it. So we evaluated, hey, what's the 20% 20 to 25% growth? Where does it come from? Why are we enjoying this growth? What are we doing? But more importantly, what are we going to do to be able to sustain this? Right? And what's the next avenue? Do we raise it? Do we keep it the same? So when we get to the second half of it, that becomes a little bit easier. But this first half of it is why are we experiencing this growth? So that 20 to 25% gets broken down into the fact that the pros and the managers and employees are spending so much time with these members and these guests, not just on the court, off the court, right? So that the experience of coming through the gate and instead of coming here for an hour, now becomes 2 hours because they get to chat with the pros and the managers. So all of that segment gets broken down into contributing to why that margin or why the growth is taking place. And if we don't identify it, it just becomes, oh, maybe we're just super good at what we do, which is partially correct, but is not the main ingredient as to why it's driving that particular metric.
No, that's a really, really interesting example. And it leads me to another question that has to do with customer retention. I did a little bit of research through Ocean because I believe that sports clubs have a very unique niche and operate differently than other hospitality venues in a few ways. But one thing that I read is about customer retention being one of those key metrics that are important across the industry. I mean, you definitely want to have the returning customers. If you're a restaurant, you want to get that recurring revenue from a single individual, but I mean, you have more traffic, right? Whereas clubs, this is kind of a oxygen to them, like having these recurring members. So what are your takes on this metric? What do you value about it? How do you keep it high?
So again, I think the evaluation process, of being able to break down where we are and take a snapshot, of exactly where we are. And I think the retention is a massive word in the hospitality industry because there's so many factors to it. How many times can we influence them? Right? And how many opportunities are we going to get to influence them? And what's the cost of a mistake? What's the cost of a positive influence? Do they come back? Do they just test us for one hamburger and kind of stay home? Are we looking at the food and beverage minimums to see, although we have a $1,200 minimum for the year, how many of those members are just meeting the minimum and being done? So, we take those metrics to figure out why is 40% just meeting the minimum? What about it are they missing? So we dive deeper into, hey, Mr. Smith, we only see that a year, 4 times a year, and you're eating, $200 at a time. Why are you not spending more time here? So we dive deeper into getting an original feedback, from these members to say, hey, how could we keep you? How can we sustain you being here longer? A lot of our answers come, like I said, from the membership, but a lot of it is so psychology related. And I give you a very good example is, a lot of the golf clubs are moving away from sort of solo golf memberships to family memberships to family amenities. But how do we influence a parent to bring their entire family here is to make sure that those kids are treated with the utmost level of respect and fun and enjoyment so that it brings mom and dad in, right? So is a warm cookie to a little Johnny gonna make a difference? You better believe it is. Is it going to make a huge difference to mom and daddy? It's going to make a massive difference because the kid felt good coming here. So, small little aspects like that make a huge difference, and you have to be calculated in it. You have to be paying attention to it. And so, even on a golf course, can we, hand out or put stations where it's going to cost us $500 to have hot dogs and fries for the day to all the members? You know what? That's the thing they'll be talking to the next 2 to 4 weeks to all their friends. Hey, look at what our club does for us. So again, I'm boiling down to that sustainability comes down to that human touch, that human feel, that human psychology. What makes them feel good?
How detailed and how accurate is the information you have on these people? I mean, is it largely up to the staff to remember who these people are and their faces? Or can you go into a system and know exactly how many times, what they consumed, how often they're there, all of this information that you're using to make these decisions?
Yeah, we have a little bit of both. So from the business aspect of all our software, we have the ability to be able to track how many times somebody has visited the club individually, how much they have eaten, how much they've played golf, how much they've played tennis. And we utilize this on a smaller sample size for each department to be able to see, wow, we can see Mr. Smith is out here, 20 times for tennis, but is not using the pool, not using the golf. So we'll look at those metrics but we go to some of the more influential members and say, hey, we've seen that you're visiting very frequently. What's so good about the club, or what do you like, and how can we make the experience better? That feedback is so much more pivotal than the data in front of us, right? And data is so important today because it drives so many of the strategies, but more so that interaction in the hospitality industry tells us so many more stories than we can go and dissect and into any kind of data driven model. So the ability for my staff to be able to learn on how to recognize these members and the influential ones and the ones that are not influential, to be able to go to them and make sure that their experience is, of the highest level, and what can they do better. And sometimes the feedback is not always sustainable, right? It's very unrealistic, some of it, but you take the good with the bad. And, there's plenty of times for, hey, we need to improve on this, and there's a suggestion for this. But just to be able to, the ability to listen is critical to all of this. And the ability, sorry, one last thing, the ability to be able to respond is massive, because not only are we taking the feedback or the suggestions, but to be able to say, hey, we're taking these steps to be able to do this. I think it gives a lot of credibility to the leadership.
I think customer satisfaction and NPS, and it's being a big topic on this show because it's a little bit controversial. I've heard, especially operators from single properties, that they say, I hosted Larry actually posted a clip of this interview to LinkedIn, and he said, I respond to every review myself. To every comment, every complaint, I respond to them myself. I take time out of my day to look at them and make sure that the customer is getting personally a response. And I posted that. A couple of people told me yes, but that probably has scalability problems for larger corporations and properties. And I've also hosted people here that have said, we have a system for that. We have a cadence. We send people automated surveys. We get that data and those reports. We pass it through business intelligence and then make decisions. So there's a spectrum, right, of how personal you want to make that connection or how automated you want to make it. And being hospitality, people lean toward the first. What is the approach at Golden Ocala?
So it's definitely the first approach, without a doubt. It's the only way, and it will only be the only way because, like I said, these are touch points again. Responding to these emails or responding to the suggestions, they're just massive touch points, and the influence that is given off from that is a make or break. We don't often have situations where it's dealt with perfectly. We don't, but because you got timing, which is an issue. Some responses are delayed. Some are immediate, which is great, and some of the responses are not ideal to what our philosophies are. So it's again, it's a training, it's an understanding, it's a ritual of what is our expectations, how do we respond, but the main thing is how do we action this, and is it credible? How do we execute on it? So, which is the hardest part, because everybody loves to talk, but do we have a list of how we're going to action these? How are we going to be able to execute it, with the members to make sure that their request or their feedback was looked at, and was accurately transcribed back to them.
So let me push that a little further, Thiroshan, because I usually like to dive a little deeper when there are parts of the perspective that I have from my guests that I believe can be unpacked into much more value for other operators. So, but for that, I would love to learn roughly how many members are part of the club, how many people visit on a month.
So we have approximately 1,000 members at this club. It's grown about 30% over the last 4 years. We have approximately, I would say, 400 to 600 families visit, um, on a monthly basis. We do have 20% that, have second homes elsewhere. And we do have about 25% of them that are seasonal, because of the horse industry, that we're in. We're getting roughly about 50 to 75% of the members use it on a very frequent basis, and about 25% sort of, sporadic during the course of the year.
Well, first, those are amazing numbers. But with such high foot traffic, leading back to the conversation that we were having. I mean, how personally can you keep the finger on the pulse of the satisfaction of customers in a way that is proactive rather than just reactive? Because you're gonna get the complaints, right, and the comments, and people will send emails, and you probably can't manage all of that. But at which point does it start becoming difficult to make sure that you have proactive information about how all of these people are feeling, getting now into the thousands?
So I think that's a great question, just because there's so many strategies involved with it. And I think the leadership style is massively important and going to be influential here. Do you have a leader that is a reactive leader, or do you have somebody who's proactive, who has multiple levels of thought processes, right? That in itself is just going to tell you, what kind of pathway we're on. So with me, it is definitely the proactive part of it, and the multiple layers of questions and the deep dive. And so when it comes to these members, there's just no other way but to be able to execute on a proactive way. Are we going to get some reactive aspects of the situation? There's no doubt, from a executing standpoint and from a feedback standpoint. There's just going to be, reactions. It's a natural thing for people to want to offer their feedback. But leading from the front is certainly the only way, because the indulgence or the abundance of feedback and being reactive is very, very normal in this industry. And that's just too much. The quantity is way too much to be able to keep with, because you're constantly putting out fires. And if you're constantly putting out fires in this industry, you are behind, because you can't focus on the day to day, the touch points, the experiences, the interactions, the relationships, and the flow. You just cannot. So the leadership aspect of it is absolutely critical.
So tell me, I mean, just so that I could try to picture this for myself. Imagine that I'm a member of the club, and this is why I'm going to ask you this question. I have also read and heard from other leaders that it's sometimes just as important what happens outside of a property than inside of a property with your customers, right? I mean, that drives the fact, their ability to visit, or how often they visit, and many other things. So let me explain a little more. If I'm a member of your club, what type of communication are you with me in that doesn't happen within the club? Do I get regular updates? How do I know that events are happening so that I'm enticed to visit again? What can I expect from the club when I'm not there?
I think that's an important, very, very important topic that you brought up, because the line of communication, just with anybody, whether it's your wife, your children, your friends, your coworkers, and now our guests, are massively important as to how direct we can be with them. And you've got to look at the country clubs as a whole and see, are they progressing towards a more technologically advanced flow, right? Are our systems outdated, or are they up to date? If they up to date it, what's the latest app? How often or how frequently are we sending out emails without over congesting them, right? But from our app, are we educating them as to where the calendar of events, where's the next dinner going to be, or the tennis tournament, or the member guest? So that part, we are fully aware, and we are fully compatible with the members, in order to make sure that, hey, here's our app. We've spent thousands of dollars. We've spent thousands of dollars on software. You have the ability now to take this app to be able to book your reservation, which makes it an ease of comfort for a lot of the members. Book your tennis court reservation, book your tea time, but just go on there and be able to communicate with the membership director. Hey, Brittany, how are you? I see this, blah, blah, blah. Can you get back with me? So the ease of use is a massive, massive thing. A lot of clubs just are not technologically there, and if you're not, you're behind, but this keeps the members that are outside of the club fully engaged to, hey, we have a lobster night, or we have a tennis social, we have a Cinco de Mayo social going. So it's in front of you, and we follow it up with carefully planned emails and carefully planned notifications. It's just not a free fall, to everybody, because we know what happens. People want to unsubscribe. They just think it's too much. So even that has a strategy before it. But yeah, that member hook is critical, especially for the ones that are not living inside of the club.
Since you've brought up the app, because this is also a fascinating topic for me, particularly the role of technology within the hospitality industry that either gets jumped into with a lot of hype or pushed aside by many leaders. So you just said you have an app. That already tells me that you're making an active effort to engage where the customer is outside of the property, which is their phone or their computer or whatever. Right? Does this app interconnect with everything else that happens inside the operation? I mean, does it connect to the systems that you leverage on a day-to-day basis to understand what is happening at the property in real time?
It does. It does. And it's fully integrated and it has the applicable software to be able to charge you for anything that you want on your phone and pay for everything up front. But the main thing is that it's fully interactive and which the members tend to enjoy. That it's not just an app with a poster on it, about uh a pickleball as a spa event, right? It is interactive and we have the ability to be able to react with the members and the guests immediately.
What else can you do through that? I mean, I've already heard you say you can make purchasing in advance, you can book the courts and make reservations. What else does the app offer me? And the reason I'm asking you that is it's an interesting direction to me. Not every club, not every hospitality operator chooses to build an app, right? I mean, it's a deliberate decision that instead of going out and finding tools that already exist, we're gonna make this, in our own shape and terms. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is primarily the events, right? And being able to see, hey, what are my dues and look at all that I'm getting for it. That's just the first stage in seeing value. But we have and we're working on a second portion of the app and it's still kind of in talks and about anybody who is inside the club from a real estate standpoint will have an ease of access to different vendors, right? So for example, if I'm living inside the club and I want to, have my grass cut or have somebody trim my trees. Part of the experience would be to be able to say, hey, here is a certified top 5 guys that we are using inside, landscapers inside the club. It's one click. Right. Or, you want to have your tree removed. We have 5 certified vendors that we have. It's one click. So the ease of use now for a homeowner becomes expedited, right? So it's at a click of a button. You don't get this anywhere else. Otherwise, you're on Google trying to search for blah 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 blah. These are credentialed, they are certified, they have insurance, all the work's been done. But here it is being a homeowner, right? The experience now just becomes elevated. These are things that we're working on. We do have members who, kind of help us with this because they are in the industry. So the combination of the conversation again with these members. Hey, what do you do? What brings you to Ocala? What's your business like? And all of a sudden, now here's the connection. I don't do it, but here's so and so. And all of a sudden, this just elevates and elevates. And now we're at this platform where homeowners will get this experience that nobody else does.
I know this might be hard to answer, but so if it's okay if you don't have the exact number. But how would you measure the return of investment on something like that for another operator that might be thinking of, hey, maybe we should go this direction, maybe we should create a system or platform for our own? How would you quantify return of investment for them?
You mean from a homeowner wanting to live inside the club and using the app and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, mostly actually the decision to have your own proprietary platform for your customers.
Yeah. So look, I think we'll look at the real estate data as well, right? To be able to say we took homeowner prospect A, we showed them their home, they loved it, everything's great. We showed them, did we need to be able to convince them to purchase? Were they satisfied with the amenities at the club or how it looks? And then we take the last aspect of, the app and the technology to say, hey, if you press this button, you have the ability to be in your house on a Friday night and be able to have a touch point from one of our food and beverage stations to be able to deliver food to your house. Will this experience enhance your stay here at Golden Ocala? And from that, we are able to track and be able to metrically quantify how many homeowners are moving in because of that home experience and how many of them are leaving because of a lack of experience. Or is it a change of life? Is it a lifestyle change? Is it a financial move? Those exit interviews for homeowners are massively important for us for feedback. So we are able to track that. And over the course of the years, it has grown tremendously because the experience of the members is amazing. And the feedback that we do get from membership directors as to why people are moving, a majority of them, it's a very small number, but majority of them is, change of life. I'm moving back with my kids in this county or a spouse passed away, so that kind of thing. And occasionally we do get members who are not satisfied. I mean, that's just the reality of the business. And I think it'll be disingenuous for me to say, oh, everything's just great. No, we do get those aspects that come back and say, it just didn't meet our expectations. It's great, something to work on.
So my takeaway from that is the app, I mean, the platform, having your proprietary platform, being able to decide what you want to put forward for your customers. Most of the return we'll be seeing in, and again, please keep me honest, most of it will be seeing in retention, satisfaction, experience, NPS potentially as a side effect of all of this, but also acquisition because you're able to tell them, hey, we have this that other places maybe don't have it. Would you say that's more or less accurate? Is there something else that you're saving, like maybe time from employees, for example?
Yeah, I think it's saving us it's giving us an opportunity, right? I think before sometimes we would not see this opportunity to be able to, deliver food to a homeowner's house or be able to call back a member who booked a lesson online and interact with them about bringing their whole family. So it just becomes an opportunity. It becomes a window for us to be like, wait, hold on, we have Mr. Smith and his wife are now wanting to be first time, tennis people or wanting to take a massage for the first time, and we dive further into it. So it just gives you a window to be able to dive into, an opportunity road to say, hey, listen, we have a new prospect, a new member. But the ultimate thing is, did it enhance the experience? And that is the number one clue for us and number one cue. And that's it. But with that being said, there's so many members who are technologically challenged, and with that comes a whole new level of education and training that we have to now, set the time for. And which
That makes sense. Well, moving on to an entirely different subject, Thiroshan, but I want to make sure I at least can ask you this question, and it has to do with F&B. This is something that I've recently read as well. It's that food cost for operators, I mean, the industry best practice should be around 28 to 30%.
Mhm.
And for some, it's running up to 34, even 36%, particularly when the decisions are not made by demand, for example, or forecasting. So I guess my question has to do with, for example, how do you manage inventory for something like, I mean, let's use the food and beverage example, right? How do you manage inventory? Is it largely up to the judgment of the people that work there and the main chef and the general managers, or is it driven by historical data and systems? And what's the approach there?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing question because that is the question now. Everything's about costs, right? Everything's about, the macro microeconomics, politics, blah, blah, blah. And I think if you don't address all the ingredients, I think you miss the whole boat. And when you have these meetings, you know, with your F&B team or your chef and your food and beverage manager, you discuss what the costs are of, hey, of beef, right? And the rise in it. And what is the applicable direction of raising, actual price of these meals because of the rising food costs. And that's the level of discussion because it's too easy to say, hey, listen, you know what, it was, $5 a pound and now is, it's $7 and now let's add it to, the total cost. That's the easy thing to do. I think that's where the catastrophe happens, right? It's because people, no matter how they earn their money, whether it's blue collar or white collar, they are looking at prices. They are price cognizant, right? And they having a look at, hey, yes, I guess oil is up and inflation is up and blah, blah, blah. But do I really want to pay $21 now for my hamburger? Right. And it's just a common sense approach of getting the entire team together and saying, what's our overall strategy? Are we looking to have traffic? Because if we're looking to have traffic, we've got to make sure that, our margins are going to take a hit, but we need the traffic because inside of the traffic, they're ordering 2 extra glasses of wine, right? Or they getting a dessert. And now we can build on the other aspects of it rather than taking a hamburger from, $17 to $21. So the common sense approach is massive, but the business sense, you can't forget about the business sense because at the end of the day, we are in it for profit. We're in it for being able to be sustainable, to being able to add to the bottom line. But I think the sensible approach is the one that helps us keep the traffic. And that's what we've done in the sports section of it. Amidst prices going up, we were still able to say, hey, listen, hold on. I'm invested in the relationship with you and I'm not going to lose it over $2. I'm not going to lose it over $3. And that's the message indirectly to them. Hey, the relationship is more important. So the sustainability off of that became amazing. The connection became amazing because these are very smart people. They know what an increase of a hamburger is going to feel like. They know what an increase of a bottle of a wine, a glass of wine going from $7 to 11. They see it. And, and when we think and we become naive to the fact that nobody's paying attention is when you lose. So I think it takes a team. It depends upon the club situation and their costs, but what their overall message is, right? Because there's plenty of restaurants. There's tons of restaurants that they can go to and they can get, a steak dinner for, for $40 somewhere. But, here at Golden, it's, $59, even if they're affluent. They look at all of it, right? You're going to get the 10%. They're like, oh, let me just sign my check, for the $80 T-bone. You're only going to get that. But it's the other 90 that are very cognizant of these prices. And if you are not cognizant as a team, it's when the catastrophe happens.
Absolutely. So since we're coming toward the end of our time, Thiroshan, but I want to ask you a couple of questions more about the forward-looking perspectives that you may have, both about Golden Ocala and your role in the industry. One that I think is extremely valuable is I want you to picture in your head right now your bucket list, your operational board, whatever you use to track your to-dos, and find one of those projects that you know will take time and effort that you've been kind of pushing because of that. A problem that you have figured out is there that you know has a solution, something you like to improve, anything like that from the operational aspect. And tell me what that would be. I mean, just one thing.
Oh man, you got me on the last question here. So let me better understand your question. Is that one thing that I would like to have? Is that what you sort of asking, like that I'm missing, or
It
tell
could
me
be. I
again?
mean,
Yeah.
it could take many shapes, but yes, I mean, it's something on your bucket list, something that you love to be able to do now.
So I would love to be able to increase the time of experience at the club, meaning that we have calculated that the longer people were able to spend at the club, they became married to the environment. They stayed here longer. They've called their spouses to, hey, join us. And eventually the conversations led to, we can see ourselves living here. My goal is to be able to have the amenities for families and for moms and dads, because they live stressful lives, but for families to be able to come over and take 2 hours and turn it into four. Because once we get to that metric of past 2 hours, we know that the feeling and the feel good and the experience is now here. So whatever we sell going forward, hey, we have a junior camp. Hey, we have a neon, a glow in the dark tennis event on this night, or we have a 80s pool experience for the whole family, or we have a steak dinner. Now, all of a sudden, the investment, or people are more invested into wanting to spend time here and to buy the ingredients and to buy the experience. But it just gives us an opportunity to build a relationship or to enhance the relationship. I can't tell you enough about it just because it's not a spoken word. It happens to us constantly. We just have a massive adult child tournament here last week. The experience that these parents had with their children over the duration of the 4 hours was incredible. The ability for us to think on our feet and plan of having photos developed, immediately as soon as they arrive here, so that in an hour, we are transforming those photos into a frame for mom or dad to have with their little son to take home. And because they were in a moment with their kid on a tennis court, it goes a million miles. So we took 2 hours and made it into four and had a little breakfast for them. They played a little tennis event. They got to experience the awards. They got to experience this moment with their mom and dad. So the feedback comes to us and the metrics and keeps on telling us that the longer we have them on premises, so the greater ability to be able to sustain them, build the relationships, which makes our jobs a little easier because the negative feedback becomes minimal. Because they don't want to be yelling at someone that they became a friend with, but it just all becomes very positive. So we're grateful for the ability to be able to see this and to be able to make that a bigger goal for us.
That is an amazing response. And I think also very unique, very particular to the specific space that you're in, to the reality that you're living about the club, right? But I mean, how do we make people stay longer? Seems like it has many ways of achieving that, from everything you've discussed, the standpoint of experience, of satisfaction, of many things, right? That could go come into play. So I think that that's an excellent response. So Roshan, before I let you go, I'd love to go through a quick lightning round with you. Just a few questions. I want you to respond off the top of your head. whatever comes to mind first, something simple, quick, just to kind of get your feel for your perspectives on all of these questions. So
Okay.
one that I usually like to start with is, in your opinion, what is the most overrated thing in hospitality technology today?
That's a tough one. I would say probably websites.
Okay. Okay. I would love to unpack that a little more, but I
Okay.
know this is a lightning round, so
Yep.
I'm going to ask
Yep.
you again sometime. What is on the flip side, the one system that you absolutely need?
More amenities.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And Thiroshan, what is the best hospitality experience you've had outside of a club, of course, and what made it stand out?
I visited a small country club in South Carolina, and it's your typical Southern country club, not very high end, very middle of the road. Golf course, amazing, but it was just wasn't anything spectacular from a from a visual standpoint. But the level of warmth was absolutely incredible. I come back to the cookie experience again, where you ate your dinner, your sandwiches or whatever. It was amazing, and you had the chef come out to your table and bring out 7 of the warmest chocolate chip cookies. The It's a simple, probably cost you $2, but it came out, and you've never seen grown men act like little kids before. I'm like, wait, what is this? It's a warm cookie, chef. How you doing? The meal was great. Even if it wasn't, it made you feel like the meal was good. So the experience, again, the touch points of those small little things, and at a very mediocre place. It's not a high end place like so that's just one particular experience that just stood out to me.
Yeah, I can see why. And it's the second time I've heard somebody say the chef came out. I don't know, the impact of that is just great. One last question then, Therotion, if you were in hospitality today, would you still be in sports or would you be doing something else?
Think I'll do a lot more. A lot more. Just all of it appeals to me. And so the combination of sports, food and beverage, golf, all the rest of the amenities and real estate, I'm in that too. So yeah, all of it.
Great. Makes perfect sense. So, Therotion, we're coming to the end of the show. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating. Honestly, this has been a great conversation. Love to hear about the customer experience and everything you do at the club and how you're looking at ways to make sure that you're improving the lives of people and that they want to spend more time with you there. So thank you once again. And I always like to ask this, where can our listeners follow you or what you're building or Golden Ocala so that they can continue to stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to goldenocala.com. All my contact information is there, or you can look at me on LinkedIn, Thiroshan Chetty, or any other social media sites. I'm under my name, Thiroshan Chetty. Feel free to reach out, but mainly at our goldenocala.com website.
Thank you so much once again, Thiroshan, and thanks everybody for listening to Deep Current. If you are an operator dealing with any of the challenges Thiroshan discussed here today or have gone through that before and want to keep that conversation going, feel free to reach out to us at oceansco.com. Until then, I'll see you next time.